Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Liz Perez. I am program manager for 10,000 Degrees in the North Sonoma and Sonoma Valley region. I have been working for 10,000 Degrees. I think this is going into my 6th year. I started off working in the Central Marin area, and then I transferred over to working in the area that I actually lived in, which is North Sonoma, and then added Sonoma Valley to my region as well. I did grow up in Sonoma County, sorry. I attended Healdsburg High School. I was not part of 10,000 Degrees. 10,000 Degrees was not a program that was available when I was in high school. I went to Healdsburg High School. Then I ended up going to Sacramento State to do my undergrad in ethnic studies and minor in sociology. And we can talk a little bit more about that later, but yeah, I came to 10,000 Degrees because my sister was actually in 10,000 Degrees when she was in high school. She also attended Healdsburg High School, and she let me know about the program right after I finished grad school, my master's in counseling. There was a position that was available, so that's how I started working for 10,000 Degrees.
Cool, thank you, Liz. I'm Rondell Gibson, the program manager for Central and Southern Marin. Originally, I started out designing or working with, designing a program for 8th grade transitioning into 9th grade in San Rafael. And then I moved into becoming a college advisor with 10,000 Degrees. And then from there became manager of the Central and Southern Marin. And then this year I'm new to the actual Central Marin. So that's something that's been added to my caseload. So I'll be learning and growing with the organization even more. So I was a student back in 2003 in high school when I came into contact with 10,000 Degrees, where I completed my summer intensive for a week-long session at Dominican. And then from there became a mentor while being in college, and then graduating college to still serving as a mentor, which then led me to realize that I had more fun, working with high school students than I did in my day job. So I came 10,000 Degrees full time, and I've been here for about 10 years now. So only a few more years than Liz, but we grow together and we make each other better here, and the organization a lot better. So I went to St. Mary's College, where I got my undergraduate degree in business administration, which was a whole lot of fun. So I love telling students to go to college, find themselves, because they'll end up having a whole lot of fun and growing with themselves. But today we're going to talk about financial aid, and that is exactly how I paid for my college, was through financial aid. So this is highly important and big to me. So we can begin, yeah. So as you see the slides here, we have statistics about our organization. We do pretty well for ourselves with having above an 80% rate of students going off to four-year institutions and graduating. This is a lot larger than the national average. So I just want to point that out to everyone. Cool, we can move forward. So I just talked about how I paid for college, which was financial aid. Liz did financial aid, and all of our students will complete financial aid applications, which we meet with them in the month of October and help them to complete everything. But we always start with essentially 2 applications to make sure that our students and the individuals that we work with understand where to access the free money. And those 2 applications are called the FAFSA, which is a federal application for only students who have a social security number or have a certain visa. So for more questions, we say ask us directly later on, and we'll be able to answer if you should complete a FAFSA. The second application is the California DREAM Act, which is for our for all undocumented students in California who've been in California or have attended school for at least 3 years. And that could be a combination of middle school, high school, elementary. So those applications all open the same day, which is also the same time that the 10,000 Degrees Scholarship open, and then that is October 1st. So I love that all dates are the same, so no one has to remember multiple dates. And they close for priority deadline March 2nd, which is the same for all applications.
Before we keep on going, I did want to remind our attendees that if they do have any questions, there is a Q&A section at the bottom of your tabs, and you can just type in the questions there, and we'll read them out as they come in. Thank you. Okay. So as Rondell mentioned, there are two different applications to apply for financial aid, the FAFSA and the California DREAM Act. A little bit more on the California DREAM Act. For students that do apply for California DREAM Act, they must meet what is called AB 540. So this is basically that the student must have been in a California school for 3 years or more. They must also obtain a high school diploma, a GED. They can complete the California High School Proficiency Examination, or have an associate's degree to be able to qualify for the California DREAM Act and be AB 540 basically eligible. So the California DREAM Act is an application that gives state aid. It's very similar to what the FAFSA is. The only difference would be the type of aid that is given to students. So like I said, California DREAM Act would give you grants from the state of California, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well, whereas the FAFSA would give you a little bit different aid as well. You can go to the next slide. What does financial aid exactly pay for? We get this question a lot where students will be like, okay, well, I applied to the FAFSA or the California DREAM Act. I'm going to get so much amount of money. Do I only have to spend that on my tuition? Which is, yes, you should, but there's other factors that you might need to consider as well. So financial aid will pay and should pay for your cost of attendance. So what does cost of attendance necessarily mean? That would be your housing. So whether you are going to be living on campus or living on your own, off campus, living with parents. Yeah, so that will be part of the factor. Also other expenses that you might have. So your personal expenses, whether you need to have your cell phone, pay for that, pay for different bills. If you have your insurance, you need to pay for your car insurance, gas, parking permits, everything that has to do with you getting healthy and safely to your college campus and to your classes. Your clothing as well, your books and supplies, your meal plan. So if you were to live on campus, having to have select a different meal plan, or leaving some money for you to buy groceries or eating out as well. So this all basically embeds what cost of attendance is and what your financial aid would be able to pay for. Anything else to add, Rondell?
I think you did a great job, but one thing I want to add is that when thinking about this, knowing there could be two students who go to the same school but have a total different cost of attendance. Liz spoke about all the various topics here, from transportation to books to tuition to living expenses to even insurance on a car or health insurance. But there's certain costs that are going to be fixed, meaning they're going to stay the same for all students, and there's some adjustable areas which are going to be different per student. So for me, when I went to my first year, St. Mary's allowed me to have a car on campus, so there was a parking permit I have to pay for. I don't know about Liz in her first year at Sac State, but did you pay for parking, Liz?
I did not. I didn't have a car my first year, so yeah, I didn't have to pay for that.
So that would keep her cost of attendance down, whereas I probably inquired a little bit more cost, just all due to my car. Good thing was I was fortunate enough to pay for that. Now, financial aid also has a side of, there's a creativity piece. So just to give you a quick story and a synopsis, I have a student, we all had a student who paid for his education via fixing and then selling cars. That's how he paid for his living, while the state aid that he was receiving was only enough to pay for his tuition. So there's other ways of paying for tuition, but these are, we're gonna get about the common areas next. So let's move on. So here we have 3 different categories which make up financial aid. So first one obviously we see is called gift aid. This is the aid that we look at that is free money, and those are the categories of grants and scholarships. These funds of money do not have to be repaid. These are free to students to complete their education. Some of the scholarships will be specific to what they can pay for, but whereas 10,000 Degrees scholarship that we administer and give out to students can be used for for every category for students. So housing, transportation, health, food. But there's some scholarships that will only pay for tuition and housing. So, then we also have work. We have work. So that can be work study or working off campus, two different areas of work. So work study is a federal program that only our FAFSA qualified students can do right now. But then as of actually this year, California is offering volunteer opportunities, and students can receive money for volunteering for certain agencies. Definitely say follow up with us to get more information about this if you're wondering about this, if you're an undocumented student. The cool thing about the federal work study program though is the school will give money to students to host a job like in the library or in the cafeteria, or even with what we call rec sports, is where the athletic department and everything is ran. This money will not be taxed essentially, so students will essentially make more per hour, and their work schedule is around their college schedule, so it has the maximum flexibility for students. And then students don't have to worry about transportation, how to get back and forth. They can just essentially go to class, then go to work and go back to class. And then there's the students that don't have work study that will work off campus at a Starbucks, at a Safeway, or taking care of children. That's another form of work, but that one is not through the federal program. So then there's no taxes being pulled out of that income, or there's taxes being pulled out of income, which makes it less than possibly work study in some cases. Our last category is loans. So loans is a source of funding that has to be repaid, and also has to be repaid with interest. So students will end up borrowing money and then having to pay back what they borrowed in addition to whatever the percentage is on that loan. This is a last case situation where we tell our students to access money. And this is completely last case. We've exhausted all scholarships. We've contacted the college of our choice, and we've asked for more funding and more support, more aid. And then if there is no more aid and a student really is set on that school, that's the best fit for them, then there comes a loan possibility. We definitely believe that students should invest in themselves in order to go to school, but not if it's a detriment amount. So we always advise that we don't typically advise our students to take out more than $5,500 a year in student loans, as it can have an adverse effect on their future. Cool, let's carry on.
I guess we can also talk a little bit about how we actually utilized each one of the resources for the different types of aid. So for example, for myself, I applied to the FAFSA when I was in high school, and that gave me gift aid, which were different grants that were available through that. I then also applied to scholarships, which is a different type of gift aid. When I was in my second year of college, I believe, I decided that I wanted to work. I was able to see how much I can balance between my schoolwork and working. So I applied to a job on campus, which, like Rondell mentioned, was really good because it gave me the flexibility to go to my class, come back to work, and maybe if I needed to go back to class, they were fine with that. The other cool thing about having a job on campus through work study was that when it was like holidays and I wanted to take time off, or I had finals week that I needed to study, they understood that that was what I needed to do. So they were okay with me taking that time off. So they gave me all that time off. And if I wanted to work over the summer, they were able to adjust the hours that I needed to be able to pay me for that as well. It doesn't work like that in every case, but for the position I had and the department I worked for, they were able to extend the hours that I was working for even through the summer. So I had a job and I stayed at Sacramento, and I also was able to go and take community college classes during the summer and get a head start on some of my classes. I didn't necessarily need loans my undergrad, for my bachelor's until I went into grad school was when I needed the loans. But as Rondell mentioned, loans is like the last resource that we resort to if needed. And also looking at the amount that they're offering you with loans. And if it's not necessarily that you need that full amount, to not go ahead and take the full amount, because that's still money that you're going to have to pay back. So if you didn't need it in the first place, don't take it out the full amount at least. So just kind of making, looking at what your cost of attendance will be and how much maybe you spend on a weekly basis, and knowing how much you would need for the school year. Yeah, so we can move into where does financial aid come from? There is a question that came in before I go into that. Does the money made from work study always go directly to tuition, or does it ever go to the student? That is a great question. It depends on what you would like it to go to. In my case, the money went directly to me in a check, and then I was able to utilize that in my personal expenses. So remember when we spoke about the cost of attendance, personal expenses were part of that. So it can go directly to you, the student, as well. Anything else to add, Rondell?
Just my situation was similar to yours as well. So I had the option when I first was, hired for the job in rec sports. It was that you can have the check go directly into your student account, or you can have it, pay you out. And if it goes into the student account, then it would automatically be used for whatever your remaining balance for your education is, whether that be from housing, or that be from meal plan, or that come from tuition. But for me, it was like, I opted, like Liz, to have the check not go into my student account after the first time, because then I was like, that's actually money I needed for personal expenses. And I had scholarship money coming in later that would pay for my education, but I couldn't use that scholarship money for personal expenses. So I had to juggle what I use scholarships to pay for and what I use work study to pay for. Yeah, so definitely I agree with Liz, like having the money come, if you can have the money come directly to the student, then the student can pay for what they need most at that time. All right, we're ready. So
I think we skipped one slide. Go back one. There we go. Thank you.
there we go.
Okay, so where does financial aid money come from? So first, we are going to start with the big sum of money that comes from the federal government. So that would be for all the students that do apply to the FAFSA. There is something called Pell Grant, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well, but a lot of the money does come from the federal government to pay for the Pell Grant and allow students to pay for their tuition that way. And then we have the state government. So this would be what we have, our Cal Grant, and we'll also talk about that in a little bit. But our Cal Grant is for students that apply to both the FAFSA and the California Dream Act. It is money from the state of California. The thing with this, the Cal Grant, is that you do need to stay in the state of California to be able to use that money for your tuition. So that's the only way it would be awarded to you if you stay in a school in California. Yeah, anything else to add on this one, Rondell? Right. Next slide. We also have money coming from the college and the university. So this is known as institutional grants. The schools itself also have a certain amount of money that they can award students. These amounts are going to vary all depending on each school and how much each school has to offer the student. But that is also a resource for students, money coming from the university itself. And then lastly, we have miscellaneous sources. So this would be money coming from the different scholarships that students would apply to, whether those would be local or a lot state scholarships, federally funded scholarships. But yeah, a great place for students to look at scholarships if they are going to apply. First, we have the 10,000 degree scholarship that we have all our 10,000 degree students apply to, but also visiting your college and career counselors, and they all have great resources of different scholarships that students can apply to. And sometimes they're online on your school website for the College and Career Center, where you can take a look at what different scholarships are available. Do you want to add anything else, Rondo?
You hit it right on the head. We're good.
We have one other question. How many scholarships can you apply to? That's a great question. There's no limit. You can apply to as many scholarships as you want. The more, the better. I can talk about my sister. My sister ended up applying to about, I want to say like 35 scholarships when she was in high school, and she had a lot of money left that she didn't necessarily need. So she was able to defer some of those scholarships to the following years when she needed that money, because some of those scholarships did need to go directly to tuition. So they were going to go directly to the university to pay for that. But yeah, apply to as many as you can, that you can always use that money later on when needed. Yeah. Anything else to add there?
Yeah, we have another question. But before I answer that question, or you answer the question, I was talking that it's also never too early to apply to scholarships. I had a student who applied in her junior year, and by the time it was December of their senior year, they had already accumulated $23,000 in free scholarships. So this student, who then also was eligible for all the federal and state aid, ended up being able to go to any college he wanted to because he had more than enough funding. So this is a way to secure the school of your choice if you get accepted, is by just doing scholarships as if it was like your daily job. Apply it as many as you can, treat it like a numbers game, you know, like the lottery. So the more lottery tickets you buy, the better your chances are. But for scholarships, you have a much greater chance of getting a scholarship than you do the lottery. So apply as many scholarships as you can. And on my caseload with students, we try to get through 2 scholarships a month if we can, and we typically start in October. So yeah, like I got scholarships from St. Mary's. I went in and talked to the financial aid office, and I end up, just from stepping foot through the door, the officer looked at my application and then actually decided to give me more scholarship just for me showing up when I was asking a question about how do I make a payment. And he was like, well, actually, let me look at your account and we'll get you, see if we can get you some more money. So I always tell students to phone the financial aid office as well, so that way you can try to get more institutional aid. Liz, did you want to answer the question, or would you like for me to do it?
You can go ahead.
So it says, if I'm offered loans, do I have to accept them? So you do not have to accept loans. Loans are completely optional. The funny thing about it is your free financial aid, meaning grants and scholarships, those are optional as well. But the schools will automatically accept the free money. The loans you will have to sign for and then accept, and then as well as signing an agreement. So you do not have to accept loans. We tell students to let that be the last option. And literally, a lot of our students will wait until July and August to make the decision if they're going to take that or not, which gives them extra time to figure out how to, if they're going to get more scholarships. So loans are, no, you don't have to accept them. And like Liz said earlier, you can actually, if you do need loans, you can take out just what you need. So if you're offered $2,500 and you only need $1,200, then you can literally take $1,200. Another question, Liz, if you want to answer, says, what if I'm a U.S. citizen, permanent resident, but my papers are not, or I don't have papers? Can I still apply to FAFSA since they ask for parents' SSN number?
Yeah, so it's asking if the student is a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident, but parents are not. So parents would not have a Social Security number. This is a great question. Thank you so much for asking this question. Yes, so the student, if the student is a U.S. citizen, legal permanent resident, you would be applying for the FAFSA. You would still include your parent information. Social Securities would not need to be required for a parent if they do not have one. Under the section where it would ask you for a parent Social Security number, you would just put all zeros. and that is fine. They know what that means, and they will go with that. Basically, at the end, what would happen is that the parent wouldn't be able to electronically sign the FAFSA because there is no social security number, but there is an option to print a signature form, which you would just have to print it, the parent sign, and then the address is on the form, and you would just need to mail out that form as soon as possible, because the application technically would not be processed and complete until they receive that form. So yes, you can definitely apply even if parents do not have a social security number. And we have another question that came in. Will my parent information be safe if I add it to my FAFSA? Yes, so all information is safe on the FAFSA. There's a FERPA law that has to keep all information safe. Nothing can be dispersed to any other organization. It has to stay only for the purpose of gathering this information to be able to qualify you for financial aid and see how much you can qualify for. But yeah, that is a great question. Thank you for asking all these. Another question. Is there a difference if you submit financial aid in October versus in February? Will I get more money? Rondell, you want to answer?
Yeah, one of our things that we do at 10,000 Degrees is make sure or try to urge all students that we come into contact with to apply early, because your chances at receiving the aid is greater. And reason why we say that is because the federal government offers what is called the SEOG grant, Supplemental Educational Opportunities Grant. And this grant is a limited source of funding, and not every college receives the same amount of funding from the federal government. So students who apply early and that have extreme need, extreme financial need, will be the ones considered for this. So if a student waits to apply until February, this money could possibly already been dispersed to incoming students and given out. So we want students to apply early, and then as far as scholarship dollars, every scholarship has a deadline, and students won't necessarily receive more just because they applied early, or have greater chances. It looks better. It means that they're organized, it means that they're committed, it means that they're determined, so it makes them look better. But definitely in the realm of for federal aid, students who qualify, we definitely say apply early. Your chances of receiving the Supplemental Educational Opportunities Grant is greater. But just because a student may get it one year doesn't mean that they're going to be guaranteed that source of funding for the next year or following years.
Mm-hmm. We have some questions also in the chat. Let's see. So I think this is referring to scholarships. How about the students that don't have papers and they are not dreamers? So yes, so for students that would not have social security number or have DACA, there are also certain scholarships that you can apply to that don't require any information. They might be based on your extracurricular activities, so any volunteer work you do, interests, sports, the major that you might be interested in applying to. They might also be more in financial need than what your actual social security number is for this purpose. Several scholarships do ask that you still complete a California Dream Act in this case. So as long as the student would have been in a California school, for 3 years or more, they can qualify for the California Dream Act, and that is maybe one of the requirements they would have. Okay, and then there's another.
We have a question, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. There is another question. If you were to get money from scholarships, can you save it in your savings or invest it for something later? Yeah, that is a great question. So if the scholarship is going directly to you, yeah, I would say definitely save that money and invest it into something that you would need later. because circumstances might change where you might need that additional money that you have from that scholarship later on for your tuition. As I mentioned earlier, like my sister had applied to several scholarships that she didn't need the extra money that year. So she was able to defer at least the ones that were going directly to pay for tuition. But those that go directly to you, yes, save that money. If you do not need it at that moment, please save that money. Let's see. One more question in the chat. Are there fake scholarships? How can you tell the difference while you're searching so you can apply to as many as you can? I would say if the scholarship is asking you directly to put like credit card information or anything that just doesn't seem right, then you can kind of know that it's not a real scholarship. But for the most part, if you search at your scholarships that are from directly from your high school, those are going through the school, and your college and career counselor has verified those. Also, if you search on our 10,000 Degrees website, we have a list of outside scholarships. Those have been verified as well, and other websites that are on there where you can search for these scholarships. Okay, anything else to add to that, Rhonda? All right. Yes, and if you all go into the chat, there is a link on there for scholarships that are available for students that might not have a social security number. Thank you, Gladys, for sharing that. So you can just go ahead and copy that link and use that. We can also share that later on if you want to reach out directly to one of us. All our contact information is on our website. Thank you. Is there more questions, Rhonda?
No more. I think we answered them all.
Did we answer the?
Oh, did you get the for work study? Does the money go directly? Oh yeah, we answered that one, sorry.
Did you answer the one about financial aid being the same every year?
No, we did not. Financial aid can be the same every year, but it also can vary each year depending on student and their family's assets and income. So if one year, let's say a student is given a certain financial aid package based off what is called their expected family contribution. So that is a number that is figured out once the FAFSA and the California Dream Act is completed. It takes into account the family's household size, income, savings, investments. Now, once they get the EFC at the end of the application, the school will receive it and give a student a financial aid package. Now, that package in the next year could differ if a parent either loses a job, loses income, ends up getting investment money back, taking out dividends. If their income goes up dramatically, then the student's financial aid package will and can change. And if a parent's income doesn't change in 1 year and the household size doesn't change, but the student decides to work full time, that can change the student's financial aid each year as well. So it always depends on the household size, income, and also assets. But let's say nothing changes in that family, then the financial aid package will probably be the same each year. There will have some minor adjustments to compensate for what do you call the increase in cost of living. Possibly, if the school tuition goes up 5%, then most likely the school may cover the extra 5% via institutional aid. If the student's receiving aid from them, they will increase that. But if the student's not receiving aid, then the student will have to figure out how to pay that difference. We have a question.
Yes, thank you. So another question just came in. Do I need parent information if I live with my grandparents? They are my legal guardians. That is a great question. So if you're you have a legal guardianship and it is through court, you do not need your parent information. So there is a question on the FAFSA and California Dream Act that asks if you have a legal guardian, you would just select yes, and it would ask if you would like to put the information for your parents. If you don't, then you don't have to put that information and you can skip all parent-related information, and then it would just go to the student's information directly to be added on there. Okay, another question, does my financial aid
Liz,
award...
what if the grandparents, or let's say an aunt, had legal guardianship of a student, but then it changed to adoption?
Yes, that's a great question. You want to go ahead and answer, Rondell?
Yeah, so if a student is adopted by a relative or someone else, then that student is considered a dependent student. So if they're going through the court system as a legal guardianship, that student is deemed independent, like Liz was getting at beforehand. So adoption changes all parameters and makes a student dependent, because that is saying that the guardians are taking sole custody and guardianship and responsibility, a total responsibility for the student, even financial and health. So that's the big difference.
Okay. Thank you, Rondell, for bringing that up. That is a great point. Another question that's on here, does my financial aid award amount vary from one college to another? Yes, it can vary from one college to another because, as we mentioned earlier, there are institutional grants, and that might be different depending on each school and how much money they have available to offer the student. Also, depending on what kind of financial aid you were awarded, some schools might have that funding to offer you. I think Rondell mentioned earlier the SEOG grant that has funding to give students, but not at all schools. It depends on each school.
We did have, Gracie made a great point about if a student was ever in a foster care, that overrides adoption. So they would be considered independent, any foster student, and they can also, foster students can also receive a Chafee grant, which is even more funding, so they get a little bit more financial help from the government to go to school.
Okay, so there's also another question. Can I still get financial aid if I want to take a gap year? Great question. Thank you for that. So yes, if you decided that you wanted to take a gap year, you can still be offered financial aid. There might be some extra steps you will need to take in letting your school know exactly, as well as like if you were to receive a Cal Grant, know that you will be taking a gap year, so they would defer that funding to be awarded to you after, once you do enroll into college. But yes, you can definitely take a gap year and still have financial aid after that. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to go through the chat and the Q&A area, because it seems like questions are being posted in both. Okay, let's see. If you read them before me, Rondell, just go ahead and say them.
It seems like they're coming in slow on my end for some reason. I'm getting them after you've read them.
Okay, there's another question I see in the chat. How soon will I be notified if my application is accepted? What do I do if I don't hear from them? Okay, so if you complete your financial aid, whether it is the FAFSA or the California Dream Act, your application will be submitted as soon as you click the submit button, basically. So once you click the submit button, it will notify you. It'll give you like a confirmation page, I guess I can say, and it tells you the schools that you were able to put on your financial aid application, as well as an estimate amount of how much money you would be awarded. It is an estimate, so it's not for sure until the school notifies you directly from your financial aid office. But if you do not hear anything back if you do not get an email, also you will get an email letting you know that your application has been submitted. But if there's any steps that still need to be completed, such as if you had to print a signature page for your parent and maybe they haven't received it, usually they'll start emailing you when it's getting closer saying, hey, I saw that you submitted, but we're still missing this. So you'll hear some of that. If you do not hear anything at all, it might be that something was not correctly placed, or numbers might be different, that they weren't able to match it. So it is worth a shot that before the March 2nd deadline, going in and double checking if there's anything that might seem wrong in your application, just to make the corrections before the March 2nd deadline. Anything else, Rondell? Okay, so there's another question. Up to how long can I get financial aid? Do I only get it for 4 or 6 years? You want to go ahead and answer, Rhonda?
Great. Well, let's see. Breaking it down, there is the Pell Grant from federal, then there's California grant from California. Now, both of these have different lifespans for students who I would say activate them. So, meaning a student is qualified to receive Pell Grant and Cal Grant, then the Cal Grant has a limitation of how long students can receive that. Whereas the Pell Grant is kind of like if a student takes a break, then the money is on hold. But they get up to 6 years for that, and 4 years for Cal Grant. But the Cal Grant can be extended if a student places it on hold. You have 4 years of eligibility, but if you don't, let's say you go to community college and you receive Cal Grant, you may take it for first year and second year at community college. And if you have a third year at community college, you may want to put it on hold, and then until you transfer to a 4-year university, then you have 2 more years to access that money and utilize it. So there are certain schools that have different policies that will allow a student to access the Cal Grant over a longer period of time if they've had some things that's slowed them down. For instance, SF State has an impaction agreement on Cal Grant. So if a student is on track to graduate but yet can't get a class, then they will extend that Cal Grant for the next year for a student. But not every school has this policy. So that's just a one-off. But they definitely have, the Pell Grant has 6-year limitation, and Cal Grant typically is 4-year limitation. But then there's other other scholarships that can be renewed for however many years, and then some only students can receive only 1 year. So it's a case-by-case situation as well. Anything you'd like to add, Liz?
No, that sounds good. Another question came in. What if I don't accept my loans before the school year starts, and then I need them later on in the second semester? Can I still take them out? So if a student were awarded loans and they didn't end up taking them out, and then they realized second semester that they might need those loans, usually what happens is that your financial aid will be divided into the semester system or quarter system, however system you would be on in your college or university, which would allow you to accept those amounts. But let's say you put no, you don't want them, you can always go into your financial aid office and ask that they allow you to receive the loan that you had been awarded, that you now need that money. So they might just have you do like an appeal letter or something that you're stating why you need the resources now from that loan that was once awarded to you, but it should work out. So you do have your financial aid office at each one of the colleges that you can always refer to and ask them any questions. You can always refer to one of us and 10,000 Degrees, and we can help you with that process as well.
I just thought of something as you were talking about that, Liz, that students should that are given work study in their first year should take it out, meaning they should say they want it, accept it, and then they don't actually have to work it, but they should accept it, because in the next year they may not be offered work study and have to petition for it. So a way of saving a step down the road, and saving yourself as a student, is accept work study on your first year, so that way you'll be offered it in your second year, in case you need it.
Okay, there's a question. Oh, is it gone? There was a question on the Q&A that asked about what if my parents live in my home country? Can't find it anymore. But what if my parents live in my home country and I live in the United States with my with a relative? That is a great question if you needed to include your parent information on the financial aid form. So yes, you would need to include their information on there unless you were to have a legal guardianship with that relative, which would exempt you from having to include any parent information. But if that is not the case, then yes, you would have to include their parent information. And what has happened, at least in my experience with some students, that we include the parent information, and parents maybe don't necessarily pay taxes in their home country. So they end up having to they live off of like agriculture or something, and they don't make enough money to actually have to do taxes as well. So we would just put that the income made would be 0. So usually what happens then is that financial aid office for the schools that the student applied to and listed on their applications would reach out and be like, hey, I realize you entered this information. I need additional information. So at this point, the student would just have to disclose maybe what's going on, what has happened. And it is up to the financial aid office to determine whether or not they would still include parent information and have the student be a dependent of parents, or in some cases it has happened to some of my students where we wrote letters to the financial aid office and they were able to have the student be an independent student where parent information was no longer needed because they did not live with the parents. Parents did not support the student. So yeah, so just following through with what financial aid is asking you to submit, doing that in a timely manner, making sure you have, you keep in contact with that person that is your contact person from financial aid, so you don't have to kind of mention like the story or what is going on with the same person. And usually they'll give you the same person that you would be talking to for certain cases like that. Yeah, I hope that answered the question. Anything else to add on that, Rhonda?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah, so another question came in. If you're undocumented, does it lower your chances on getting a scholarship? So for students that are undocumented, you still have lots of scholarships you can apply to, which would qualify you for that do not necessarily need any Social Security information. They might just need for you to have done a FAFSA or a California Dream Act, so California Dream Act in this sense to be completed. It might ask for different factors in like what is your interest, what's your major, what is your GPA. So there's different types of scholarships out there. if you remember the link that was shared in the chat, that does have, that is a great resource for students that are undocumented to search for more scholarships that do not ask any Social Security information. But yeah, so it wouldn't necessarily lower how many scholarships you can be awarded. It would just mean maybe looking at different scholarships that do not necessarily ask for a Social Security number, which a lot of the ones that your college and career counselors have won't be asking that information. I feel like they do a pretty good job in making sure that there's several scholarships that are available for everyone to apply to. Anything else to add, Rondo?
No, ma'am.
Do you want to answer the question that just came in?
Yeah, I finally see it. I live in Contra Costa. I was wondering if you guys have a program available to use here, or if it's the same program as in Marin. Also, my counselor has never really been the best mentor, so I was wondering how I could get more help with someone in school. Great. We're here to help everybody and anyone. We don't have a program just yet in that area of Contra Costa County. So I would say that for all students that are listening right now, we do have a link on our 10,000degrees.org website under the tab of students, and then click Institute. Below, you'll see something that's called Junior Workshops. There's a series of workshops that are essentially enough to get students started and know where to head along the college application process, as well as how to deal with financial aid. In addition to that, I would say email any one of us. Our contact is on our website under staff contacts, and then you could email any one of us or phone us. Our phone number is there, and we're willing to help everybody and anybody as long as we have the time of the day. Sometimes you may have to give us about 24 to 48 hours to reply, as we are also out working with the various schools in Marin, Sonoma County, and East Bay, and some other areas. So yeah. I don't see any more questions, Liz, do you?
I do not. We do have 5 more minutes in our live webinar. If anyone has any more questions, please reach out to us now. If not, Rondell did mention that all our contact information is on the 10,000 Degrees website. You can always go in there and just reach out to any one of us. Were you going to say something, Rondell?
Yeah, one of our coworkers just posted, said that Ugo K is the person that oversees Richmond. That's the closest person that we have to Contra Costa. His name is Ugo K. He's on our website as well. You can reach out to him, as he's a great individual, and I've worked with him, so he's very knowledgeable.
If you do have more questions related to financial aid, we do have a series of videos that are on YouTube for 10,000 Degrees, and they are called Understanding Financial Aid, which does give kind of a breakdown of more information on financial aid, the applications, the different types of grants that are available, the difference between loans as well. So you can take a look at those videos for more information, and always, like I mentioned, ask questions after those, directing them to anyone in 10,000 Degrees, Rondell or myself, anyone else that works with our students. We would be more than happy to answer those. Probably the easiest way to get a hold of us would be through email, and yeah, just giving us some time to answer those, as we are currently working in our summer programming with our high school students, and then starting to prepare for our fall year that will be virtual. So we will be answering all of those questions. I think a last question came in, which was, is your scholarship renewable and up to how many years? So yeah, thank you for that question. The 10,000 Degrees scholarship is renewable. You can renew it up to 6 years. And yeah, so the first time you apply to the scholarship, it might be a little bit longer of an application, but once you have applied, you can renew the application, and it will look a little bit different and ask more information related to the number of units that you are taking in college and your GPA based on that. But yeah, you can renew it up to 6 years. Something else about completing the FAFSA and the California Dream Act that I don't think we shared earlier was that you do need to reapply every year for these applications as situations might change. Currently with us being in a pandemic and a lot of people might not have worked, that information might be different based on what you might need to declare in your taxes. So like I mentioned, every year you do need to reapply because information might change every year. But if it does change and you have to put information that are in your taxes, always reaching out to your financial aid office is the best option. They will try and figure out a way to support you, or at least let you know what they can do and what is available. Yeah. Thank you everyone for being here and asking those amazing questions. I hope that you all got a lot of information out of financial aid. Thank you to Han and Elena for providing the space and helping us out with the technical part of it. We really appreciate all your help. And thank you to our amazing staff for supporting us also in this process. Thank you, Rondell, for being here and being my buddy and presenting on financial aid.
Thank you as well, Liz, and thanks to all the team members who are here, and thanks to the participants. We know that you have other things you could be doing, but you chose to better yourselves by receiving this information. So thank you all. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day.